Okay, so this video is all about how to evaluate the credibility of sources, and in addition to that, where to find credible sources. This is a really important skill for my class because I've required that you cite one outside credible source in each of your reading responses. So when you go out there and search the internet for a credible source to cite in your reading response, I want you to ask yourself three questions about the source that you are looking at, whether it's a news article or it's a podcast that you found, or maybe even a YouTube video, for instance. The first question I want you to ask is, who is the author? And what exactly are their credentials? So your first reading response is an article written by Jeffrey Toobin, and the title of it is Our Broken Constitution. So obviously it's about the Constitution, and he thinks that there are problems with the Constitution, things that we need to change about the Constitution. So let's say you get on the internet and you start searching for articles on the Constitution. If you come across a blog post written by, I don't know, let's say a dog trainer, somebody who trains golden retriever puppies, and the entire article is about how awful our Constitution is, well, you might want to reevaluate whether or not this is a good source to cite in your paper. Probably not the best source to cite in your paper. And that's because what kind of credentials does a dog trainer have? What kind of expertise does a dog trainer have on the Constitution and our political institutions? On the other hand, if you come across an article written by a political scientist or somebody who used to work in the House of Representatives or the Senate, has some sort of relevant work experience, relevant educational background, then you know, all right, I'm onto something. Maybe this is something valid that I can use in my paper. The second question that you want to ask is, what are the author's motivations? So if you are searching the web for topics, articles on the Constitution, and you come across a website, and the address of the website is changetheconstitution.org, right? Then you know it's a political organization or maybe even an interest group that has it out for the Constitution. That maybe isn't the best source to cite in your paper, so you want to move on and try to find something else. The third thing you want to ask yourself is, are the factual statements being made by the author cited? In other words, do they tell you where they got this information from? I want to show you guys an example of this. So Huffington Post is not a good place to find credible sources or a good place to find well thought out, intellectually sound articles. And one of the reasons for this is that you'll oftentimes read Huffington Post articles and they'll just make a factual statement or claim without telling you where that information came from. So notice this is an article about Pete Buttigieg, who's running for the Democratic nominee for the 2020 presidential election, and it's about how he's financing his campaigns. Right, and you'll see that there's a comment here about Hall, somebody who's been financing Pete Buttigieg. It says, since the 1980s, he's donated more than $2.4 million to Democratic caucuses. How do we know that? How do we know that's true? There's no footnote, there's no citation. The author of this article is not telling us where this information came from. Therefore, we can't trust this author, we can't trust this article, and we can't trust that this statement right here is true. On the other hand, this is an article from 538. I highly recommend this website. This is another article about Pete Buttigieg, just published less than a year ago. And there you'll see that some of the text is blue instead of black. That means that the author is linking you to the primary source that they used to come to this conclusion, right? So let's go down to the bottom of the article, for instance. There's a claim that Pete Buttigieg won 37.5% of the vote the first time he ran for state treasurer in 2010. Okay, so if I click on that, there's actually a link to the primary source, the Indiana 2010 election report. Okay, cool. So I know that this information is accurate. I know that this is an author that I can trust. I know this is probably a media source that I can trust. Let's go back to this page though and talk more about various different sources that you can utilize. So the golden standard for credible sources are peer-reviewed journals. If you can, and really any of your college classes or any of your college courses, you should try to cite peer-reviewed journals. What are peer-reviewed journal articles? Well, they're papers published by people with PhDs or master's degrees in the topic at hand. So if you go to the American Journal of Political Science Research, all of these articles are published by people with PhDs in political science who have devoted their lives to political science research. And in order to even get your article published in a peer-reviewed journal, you have to submit that article to your peers, other people who have PhDs, master's degrees in the same topic and subject. And they read that article to decide whether or not your article is worthy of being published in the journal. And oftentimes the answer is no. It's really, really tough to get things published in journals. So this kind of source we can trust the most, okay? But for a lot of the reading response material I've assigned to you guys in this course, you may not find anything in peer-reviewed journals. You might want to use high-quality mainstream media sources instead. So here at the bottom, I've listed for you a couple suggestions. Now, I always get this question every semester in at least one or two of my American politics courses. And the question is, hey, what media source is unbiased, right? What is the most moderate, unbiased media source I can use in reading, keeping up on current events? And my answer to that question is kind of a bummer of an answer. The answer is that there is no such thing as an unbiased media source. Inevitably, all of these magazines, maybe they have podcasts, even a YouTube channel, they publish articles on a daily basis, right? They're all leaning a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. And when I say left, I mean liberal or progressive leaning. In other words, siding more with the views of the Democratic Party. And by right, I mean conservative leaning or siding with the views of the Republican Party. So here's the thing. In order to make sure that you yourself are not becoming narrow-minded, the best thing to do is to just expose yourself to as many of these media sources as possible. So I myself, in the morning when I wake up and I want to check the news, I don't just check the New York Times. I also check Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is a media company based in the Middle East, right? I also check the BBC. Maybe I'll check out the Wall Street Journal to see their take on it, right? The more you can diversify your sources, the more able you will be to critically evaluate and analyze relevant current events, okay? So last thing I want to show you is how to find peer-reviewed journal articles. Now, you may not need to do this even for my class, but just in the future, it's a useful skill. Okay, so I'm going to go to RCC's homepage, and on the right-hand side, you're going to see this tab right here. It says Library. I'm going to click on Library, and here I'm going to search this database. Okay, this database is only going to populate for me peer-reviewed journal articles. So in this case, I'm gonna type in democracy. I know, really broad, really vague. You might want to search something more specific. But I'm gonna click search, and you're gonna notice that RCC's library is gonna ask me for my login information. Down here is where you'll find the instructions on how to log in. It's pretty simple. So I'm gonna hit submit query, and you'll see here that all of these articles, 32,000 of them, have come up on democracy. Okay, so when you are actually doing your own research, you want to narrow down your search a little bit more. And if I click here, I can download the full PDF text of a particular academic journal. Okay, little secret, oftentimes you don't have to read the entire journal article to get the gist of what the author is arguing. Just read the abstract. That might be enough, and then breeze through the rest of the article. Okay, journal articles sometimes range from up to 30 pages to 40 pages, so don't get too overwhelmed by that. I know most of you guys know about Google Scholar, but just in case, I'm going to type in Google Scholar. I don't really recommend using Google Scholar because Google Scholar will not democracy promotion, did that on accident. Let's just say democracy. Google Scholar will not turn out as many articles as your library server will. And that's because only articles that are available to the public will come up on Google Scholar. And a lot of these articles are going to be pretty old. So see how this book is from 1993, this article is from 2001. Okay, using the RCC library search engine is going to be much more effective. One additional little trick though, when you're looking for scholarly articles or other credible sources maybe, is to go onto Wikipedia. Now I know a lot of your teachers and a lot of your professors in the past have told you to never use Wikipedia. They're right and they're wrong. So don't ever cite Wikipedia itself in a college paper. So in your reading responses for my class, don't use Wikipedia as a citation or a source, right? However, you can use Wikipedia to find credible academic sources. Okay, so notice how there are all these little footnotes written next to these factual statements. Okay, so these are all primary sources, or at least they should be. Okay, so if I just hover over number 4, see, this is a link to a document from the United States Senate. This is something published by the government, so I know it's something that I can pretty much trust, right? Another thing you can do is you can scroll down to the footnotes, right? See all of these footnotes. I might find some good stuff in here. And in addition to that, there's even further reading suggestions, okay? And some other US governmental sources, non-governmental sources, okay? So don't ever cite Wikipedia, but Wikipedia might help you find something that is worthy of being cited, okay? So let me know if you guys have any more questions about finding credible sources. Just write that question on the Ask Me Anything discussion thread on Canvas, and good luck.